The tactical screens showed 47 green trajectories returning to their pre-launch coordinates. They had been gone for 0 minutes. No transit time registered, no burn deceleration, no sensor ghost. The ship simply appeared where they had started, cold and quiet, as if they had never left. I was not in operations when it happened. I was in my quarters, 7 years later, writing this down. But I have read the logs enough times that the sequence lives in my bones now. The first alert came at 5:03 station time. 47 vessels, all reporting nominal health, all docked in their pre-launch berths. The tactical officer on watch stared at her screen for 11 seconds before she spoke. Where were they? No one answered because no one knew. The second alert came 30 seconds later. Every ship had acquired a new file in its command system. No origin stamp, no sender identification, no transmission log. The file had appeared the way light appears when you open a curtain, simply present where before it had not been. Admiral Lynch's complete operational plan, every tactical decision, every ship formation, every contingency strategy he had prepared for the Earth system, and in the margins of every page, quiet, precise corrections. Not insults, not mockery. Corrections, the kind a teacher makes when a student has misunderstood something fundamental, but shows promise. The last line read, "We hope this is useful. We are happy to discuss further. Please feel free to send a representative." Below it, a smiley face. I learned all of this later, during the emergency briefing. What I remember most is Lynch's face when he read the annotations on his own plan. He looked like a person who had just understood, fully and finally, that the argument he had been building toward was never going to work. Not because he was stopped, because he was simply not in the right conversation. That was the end of the fleet. It was also, in a stranger way, the beginning of something I am still trying to name. 7 years later, sitting at my terminal with the station humming around me and the stars turning past the corridor windows. My name is Calivo, Senior Xenolinguist, Council Intelligence Division, 22nd Tier, 40 years of service. I have translated dying messages from species that did not survive long enough to be remembered by anyone else. I have heard threats, pleas, declarations of war, songs of grief, maps to places that no longer existed. I thought I had developed a sense for the emotional weight carried inside language, the thing underneath the words that told you what the speaker actually meant. Then humanity spoke, and I realized I had been reading the wrong dictionary my entire career. Let me go back. 11 days before the fleet returned with its homework, I was awake at 3:12 station time. I am always awake at that hour. Decades of night rotation in the Council's Xenolinguistics Division do that to a mind. You stop sleeping in long stretches. You start listening instead, even when there is nothing to hear. Old habit, old instinct, the kind that had kept me employed long past the age, when most of my colleagues retired to their home worlds and wrote their memoirs. That morning, the duty officer knocked on my door. A young aide named Corporal Denny Walsh, 22 years old, barely 2 cycles out of the academy. When I opened the door, his face was the color of old paper. "Sir," he said, "we have a response from Sector 9. Sector 9, the words took a half-second to land. Sector 9 was Earth, the small blue planet at the edge of the outer arm. A species barely 200 years into space travel, still fighting wars among themselves over lines drawn in dirt. We had been monitoring them for decades, sending quiet pings, testing their receivers, waiting for the day they developed the technology to answer back. That day, according to our projections, was still 40 years away. Apparently, humanity had different plans. I followed Walsh down the corridor at a pace that was almost running. The signal room was already crowded when I arrived. 12 analysts stood around the main display table, all of them silent, all of them staring at the same thing. Commander Yara Pleth, who ran the night shift, stood at the back with her arms crossed and an expression on her face I had never seen before. Yara had been doing this work for longer than I had. I had watched her receive signals from dying civilizations without blinking. She was blinking now. I pushed through to the front and looked at the display. The signal was clean, beautifully, impossibly clean, no static, no distortion. It had come in on every active frequency simultaneously, including 3 that the Council had never published, 3 that only existed in our internal communication architecture, frequencies that no external species should have known existed. And the message itself, 7 words. "Do not approach Earth, this is a warning." I stood there for a long moment. Then I reached out and pulled up the language analysis. Every known language. Simultaneously. All 4,312 cataloged languages in the Council's master archive, including 17 that had been extinct for centuries, including the primary tongue of the Dorati collective, which had been a closed civilization for 600 years and had never once shared their linguistic data with anyone. The message had been transmitted in all of them at once, perfectly, without a single grammatical error in any of them. Behind me, someone said very quietly, "How?" It was not a question with an obvious answer. I sat down at the nearest terminal and started working. The first thing I did was run a verification check. Perhaps it was a relay. Perhaps some other council division had initiated a test broadcast and forgotten to log it. These things happened rarely, but they happened. I pulled the transmission origin coordinates, cross-referenced them 3 times because the first 2 results seemed impossible. The signal had come from Earth's surface, from a single point on Earth's surface, a city called London on the island nation they called the United Kingdom, a small building, according to the satellite imagery, unremarkable from the outside, the kind of building that stored old paper records or government offices. Nothing special, no visible antenna array, no transmitter structure of any kind that our instruments could resolve. And yet from that building, at exactly 3:12 station time, a signal had gone out to every receiver in the known galaxy simultaneously, in every language simultaneously, on every frequency simultaneously. I flagged the 2 prior contact expeditions, the ones listed deep in the archive under restricted access. The Dorati scout vessel that had entered Earth's outer system 63 years ago on a routine survey mission. The Council survey ship that had gone in 20 years after that to investigate why the Dorati ship never came home. Both listed as lost to anomaly. Both files sealed at Tier 1 clearance, which was 4 levels above mine. I submitted an access request. Denied in under 3 seconds. Automated denial. Not even a human review. I sat back in my chair and stared at the signal data. Do not approach Earth. This is a warning. I had spent my entire career listening to the universe speak. I thought I had developed a sense for the emotional weight carried inside language. I read humanity's 7 words again. And the thing that struck me, the thing that sat cold and quiet in the center of my chest, was not the strangeness of it. It was not the impossibility of the transmission. It was not the fact that they had used our secret frequencies or spoken in extinct tongues. It was the tone. I knew what a threat sounded like. I knew what aggression felt like coming through a signal. I had cataloged the linguistic markers of species that wanted war, species that wanted leverage, species that wanted to frighten. This was none of those things. Whoever had sent this message was not trying to intimidate us. They were not posturing. They were not making demands. They were worried about us. That was the part I could not shake as I walked back to my quarters in the gray early hours. The station humming quietly around me, stars turning slowly past the corridor windows. 7 words, 4,000 languages, every secret frequency we owned. And underneath all of it, if you knew how to listen, one very simple feeling. Please be careful. We do not want anything bad to happen to you. I did not sleep that morning. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the wall and thought about a species that had just announced itself to the galaxy by saying stay back. Not because they were afraid of us, but because they were afraid for us. Outside the window, the stars looked the same as they always had. But I knew, with the certainty that comes from a lifetime of listening, that something had just shifted. By the time I found out why, it was too late to unknow it. The sealed archive was not supposed to be accessible from my terminal. Technically, it was not accessible from any terminal below Tier 1 clearance. Technically. In practice, there were gaps. There were always gaps. Systems built over decades by different teams, patched and updated and repatched until the seams between the old architecture and the new were thin enough that a careful person, a patient person, someone who had spent 40 years learning exactly how the Council's information networks breathed, could find them. I want to be clear. I knew what I was doing was against regulations. I want to be clear about that because it matters. I was not naive. I was not reckless. I was a senior council officer with an unblemished record who had just seen something that did not fit into any framework I had ever been given. And I had tried the legitimate route, been refused in under 3 seconds. So I made a choice. I made the choice on my 4th sleepless morning after the signal arrived. I used an access pathway I had discovered by accident 14 years earlier during a routine audit of pre-council archive migrations. A gap between 2 database generations that had never been properly bridged. It let me view, but not copy, certain sealed document headers. I had never used it before, never had a reason to. I used it now. The first sealed file was the Dorati Scout mission. Expedition Log, Council Archive Reference 7714, sealed. It took me 20 minutes to navigate the gap and pull the header into a viewable state. The full text of the log was still locked, but the header contained a summary field. 4 lines of text auto-generated from the log contents when the file was first created. The summary read: Survey vessel made contact with undocumented entity. All 4 crew members requested immediate withdrawal from system. Vessel turned back under crew direction. All 4 crew members reported psychological disturbance lasting between 6 and 19 cycles post-mission. Recommend Sector 9 flagged for restricted access. No further contact recommended. Undocumented entity. Not human. Not the humans. I sat very still for a moment. Then I went to the second sealed file. The Council survey ship that had followed 20 years later. Expedition Log, Council Archive Reference 93112, sealed. The summary field had been partially redacted. Someone had gone in after the initial filing and removed portions of it manually. What remained was 11 words. Crew encountered same phenomenon. Vessel returned. No further missions approved. 11 words and a redaction. Someone had decided that even the summary of what that crew had seen was too much to leave in plain text. I pushed further. It took 3 hours and most of my remaining patience, but the archive gap let me access one more layer. The crew's psychological evaluation files attached to the second expedition's record. These were lower security than the mission logs themselves, filed under medical rather than intelligence. The gap covered them. There were 6 crew members on that second ship. The psychological evaluations had been conducted by a council medical officer named Dr. Orrin Pale, 2 cycles after the ship returned. I read all 6 reports. 5 of the crew members had been heavily medicated. 3 had resigned from council service entirely. The evaluations described a consistent set of symptoms across all 6. Difficulty sleeping, recurring perceptual disturbances, a persistent sense of being observed. 2 of the crew members, according to Dr. Pale's notes, had begun leaving food outside their quarters at night. By instinct, the way one might leave an offering, though none of them could explain why they did it. All 6 crew members, when asked to describe what they had seen in the Earth system, used the same phrase. Not similar phrases, the exact same phrase. 6 different individuals, interviewed separately weeks apart. Something very old that had not finished thinking yet. I closed the files and sat back from my terminal. The station was quiet around me, past midnight. My 3rd consecutive midnight shift spent in this chair. I had told no one what I was doing. I thought about the Dorati scout crew requesting immediate withdrawal. I thought about 6 council officers all independently reaching for the same words. I thought about the sealed records and the 3-second automated denial and the 2 ships that went in and both came back wrong. And I thought about humanity's message. 7 words, 4,000 languages, every secret frequency. Do not approach Earth. This is a warning. Not a threat. A warning. There was a difference that mattered enormously. A threat said, we will harm you if you come. A warning said, something will harm you if you come. A warning carried an implicit weight of regret. A warning meant the sender wished things were different. I opened a new document and began writing notes, working through the logic slowly, carefully, the way I had been trained. Humanity shares their world with something ancient, something that operates on a scale of perception and intelligence that makes our best instruments look like toys. Something that noticed our ships decades ago and sent them home like children being turned away from a door, not with violence, but with a firm, quiet, absolute redirect. And humanity knows about it. Humanity lives alongside it. And instead of using that fact as a weapon, instead of saying to the galaxy, we have a protector, come near us and see what happens, they said something else entirely. Be careful, there is something here you do not understand. We do not want you to get hurt. They were protecting us from their own guardian. I saved my notes and sent myself a copy. Then I sat in the quiet dark of the station and thought about a small blue planet at the edge of everything, going about its ordinary days, carrying something extraordinary alongside it, and choosing every day not to make that into anyone else's problem. At 4:23 station time, my terminal chimed with a priority alert from the Council's diplomatic office. A ship had arrived at the station's outer dock. It was not on any approach schedule. It had not sent a docking request. It had not, as far as the sensor logs could determine, traveled through normal space to reach us. It had simply appeared at our dock the way you might set a glass down on a table, quietly and without fuss. The manifest listed 1 passenger, human female traveling alone. Name on file, Sarah Van. No title, no organization listed. No ship registration, no point of origin. In the field marked purpose of visit, she had written 3 words. I was invited. I was the one who walked down to the dock to meet her. Not because I outranked anyone. But when the alert went around and everyone looked at each other and nobody moved, I stood up and put on my coat and said I would go. Old habit, when something strange arrives, send the person whose entire job is strangeness. The outer dock was a long, cold corridor of reinforced steel and observation panels. Standard docking arms extended from the walls like ribs. The far arm, number 7, was where the unscheduled arrival had settled. There was no ship at arm 7. I walked to the end of the corridor and looked through the observation panel and saw nothing. The dock clamp registered engaged. The airlock showed a confirmed seal. Pressure readings on both sides were normal. But on the other side of that airlock, where a vessel should have been, there was only open space and stars. Whatever had brought Sarah Van to the station was no longer there. I was still processing that when the airlock door opened from the inside, and she walked through. She was shorter than I expected, perhaps 5 feet and 4 inches by their measurement. Slight, dark hair cut practically short, the kind of face that settled naturally into a neutral expression that was warmer than a smile. She wore simple civilian clothing, gray trousers, a plain dark jacket, boots with a slight mud stain on the left toe that she had not bothered to clean before arriving at a galactic diplomatic station. She was carrying a small paper bag. She saw me standing at the end of the corridor and raised one hand in what I recognized as a human greeting gesture. Then she said, in perfect council standard without any accent at all, "You must be Calivo. I read your papers on Dorati phonemic drift. They were excellent." I said, "How do you know my name?" She said, "The same way I know you have been reading files you are not cleared to read for the past 4 days. We have been watching you work." She said it without any judgment, a plain statement of fact. Then she held out the paper bag. "I also brought you something. They're called biscuits. We make them on Earth. I was told Council Station food is very bad, and I thought you might want something decent." I took the bag, I do not know why. Reflex, perhaps. Some social circuitry that operates faster than rational thought. We stood there in the cold corridor, a council officer holding a bag of Earth biscuits and a human woman who had arrived from nowhere. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Then I said, "You should know that my superiors have been alerted to your arrival." She said, "I know. Commander Pleth is on her way down with the security team. She will be here in about 4 minutes. I was hoping to have a short conversation before that." She tilted her head slightly. "May I?" I said yes, because what else was I going to say? She spoke quickly but clearly, without rush, the way someone speaks when they have rehearsed something but still means every word of it. "I'm here because 3 other civilizations have sent probe formations into Earth's outer system in the past 2 years. Not the Council. 3 others, 2 of whom you're in trade agreements with. Those probes did not survive. The civilizations that sent them believe their probes simply malfunctioned. They don't know what actually happened, and we would prefer to keep it that way because the alternative is a panic." "What did actually happen?" I asked. "They were stopped," she said. "Gently, the same way your 2 expeditions were stopped decades ago." "What stopped them?" She looked at me with an expression I could not immediately classify. It was not evasion. It was something closer to the look a person gives when they are deciding how much of a heavy thing to put down in front of someone they have only just met. "Something that has lived on Earth longer than we have," she said. "Something that was old when our earliest ancestors were young. It does not have a name that translates. It does not communicate in ways that our instruments can measure. It exists, and it is aware, and it is very, very large in ways that have nothing to do with physical size." "What does it want?" I asked. "It doesn't want anything the way you or I want things," she said. "It's not interested in territory. It's not interested in resources or power or recognition. It has been thinking, as near as we can tell, since before your council existed. We don't fully understand what it's thinking about. We're not sure we're capable of understanding it, but we know it's not hostile. It sent back our ships." "Yes." "It erased the psychological state of 6 council officers." She paused. "It adjusted some things," she said carefully. "There was no intent to harm. It simply didn't want certain kinds of detailed observation, the way you might not want someone to stare." I thought about the crew evaluations, the food left outside doors. "And humanity," I said. "You live alongside this thing." "We do," she said. "We have for a long time. It doesn't interfere with our lives. It doesn't direct us or control us. It's simply present, the way a very deep ocean is present beneath a fishing boat. You know it's there, you respect it. You don't go down too far." "And the warning," I said. She nodded. The warning was our idea. When we detected your contact attempt, we discussed it for about 2 weeks. There was a lot of argument. A faint, dry smile. Humans argue about everything, but we agreed in the end that the ethical thing to do was to tell you, not because we're afraid of you coming, because we didn't want you to come unprepared and have something go wrong. You were trying to protect us. We were trying to be honest, she said, which is the same thing sometimes. Behind her, I heard the sound of boots in the corridor. The security team was arriving. She heard it too and did not turn around. There's a faction in your council, she said. That's going to want to treat this as a threat. They're going to want to respond with force. I need you to understand something before that conversation happens. What? The thing near us does not experience force the way you experience force. Your weapons, your ships, your strategies. It does not operate in those categories. If they try, the result will not be a war. It will simply be a correction. And the correction will be confusing and embarrassing, and nobody will be hurt, but the council will look very foolish, and a great deal of trust will be burned. The security team rounded the corner. Commander Pleth at the front, 6 officers behind her, all of them stopping short when they saw the 2 of us standing there, having what looked very much like an ordinary conversation. Sarah Van turned around and smiled at them. A completely genuine smile. "Good morning," she said. "I apologize for arriving without notice. I would have called ahead, but we don't have your direct line yet." She held out her hand in the human greeting gesture. "My name is Sarah. I'm the one who sent the warning. I thought it would be better if we talked in person." She held up the paper bag. "I also brought biscuits." Commander Pleth looked at her, looked at me, looked at the bag in my hand. "Kalivo," she said flatly, "would you care to explain what is happening?" "I am not entirely sure," I said truthfully. "But I think the short version is that humanity sent a representative, and she would like to speak with the council." Pleth looked back at Sarah. "You have no vessel," she said. "How did you get here?" Sarah considered the question. "I was given a lift," she said. "By whom?" A small pause. Something moved behind Sarah's eyes, a warmth and a weight together, the way a person looks when they are holding a very large secret gently. "A friend," she said, "a very old friend." The corridor was quiet. The stars turned slowly past the observation panels. The warning had come from a building in London with no visible antenna, on every frequency, in every language. And the woman standing in front of me had arrived with no ship, carrying biscuits and a smile. She had been given a lift. By a friend, a very old friend. I looked at Sarah Van, she looked back at me, and in her eyes I saw something I had not expected. Not confidence, not certainty. Gratitude. That we had listened. The council chamber was designed to be imposing, floor-to-ceiling displays, a curved table of dark composite seating 40. The light came from above, neutral and cold. Sarah Van sat in the witness chair. She accepted ceremonial tea from an aide. She drank a small sip. "This is genuinely nice," she said. "We have something similar at home." The aide blinked. No delegation had ever complimented the tea before. I sat in my observer's position along the sidewall. The senior council members filed in. 12 of them. Admiral Carew Lynch at the far end, notable because he ran fleet operations and did not attend diplomatic hearings. He had been added that morning. The council chair, Minister Valhat, opened proceedings. Sarah stated her purpose calmly, the entity, the probes. The warning, an invitation to negotiate. The council asked questions. How long had humanity known? What was the entity's influence? What happened to the 2 prior expeditions? Sarah answered everything. She did not evade, she spoke plainly. Several council members leaned forward. An hour in, Admiral Lynch spoke. Low, precise voice. The habit of asking questions that were already conclusions. "You are asking the council to designate your system a restricted zone. Take your word this entity is not a threat." "I am asking the council to respect our warning," Sarah said. "The warning was not a political request. It was factual information. I am here because we prefer cooperation to confusion. And if the council sent a fleet to establish the facts ourselves," Sarah set her teacup down, "then the fleet would be redirected. Your crews would need time to recover. Your admirals would file confusing reports. No one would be harmed, but you would all feel very embarrassed. I am not saying this as a threat. I am telling you the outcome so you can make an informed decision." Lynch's jaw tightened. "You seem very confident." "I am," she said. After the session, I walked her to her quarters. The corridor was quiet. "Lynch will push for the fleet," I said. "Yes, I expected that." "Does it concern you?" She thought about it. She never gave fast answers to real questions. "It concerns me the way watching someone reach for a hot stove concerns you. You hope they stop in time. You know it will not kill them, but it will hurt. At her door she turned. Calivo. The sealed files you read. We are not troubled by it. The fact you went looking tells us something we were hoping to see. You understood the warning correctly. You are one of the few who read it as worry. I read it as worried, I said. Yes, we are. She smiled. Good night, eat your biscuits. She went inside. I ate one in the corridor, buttery, slightly sweet, ordinary. I walked back to my quarters. Somewhere between the diplomatic wing and my door, Admiral Lynch filed the operational request that put 47 warships on a burn toward Earth. I did not know that yet. The fleet left at 300. I walked past operations at the wrong time, read trajectories on the tactical screen, 47 ships curving away. I went to Sarah's quarters immediately. She was awake. She answered in the same dark jacket. They launched, I said. Yes, about 30 minutes ago. You knew before I did. I know everything that happens on this station, not through any effort of my own. I sat down. She leaned against the wall, calm, settled. Can you stop it? I asked. I cannot do anything. I am just a person. I study languages and make soup. That is the full list of my remarkable qualities. You know what I mean. She was quiet. No, I cannot stop it. Neither can anything on Earth. Your fleet will cross the boundary. It will be corrected. It will come back. Corrected how? Nothing bad. Nobody gets hurt. The crews will be fine. Confused, disoriented. The kind of experience that fades after a few days. They will come back with nothing to show for it. And Lynch will file reports. The Council will want to try again with a larger fleet. No, she said quietly. They will not want to try again. The crews will not recommend it. Not because they are afraid, because they will have been near it. They will know force is the wrong tool, like pushing an ocean with your hands. The ocean does not notice. I thought about the sealed files, something very old that had not finished thinking yet. It is aware of us, I said. Right now, it knows what the fleet is doing. It has known since Lynch first considered the idea. Time is different for it. It is very old and has a great deal of it to work with. Are you afraid of it? She considered. No, I respect it. I am grateful for it. Sometimes when I try to think too hard about what it actually is, I feel something like standing at the edge of something very deep and looking down, but not afraid. It has never once done anything threatening. It sent back our ships, adjusted 6 crew members' memories. It returned them safely. It chose not to do anything more severe, which it could have. Does that sound like hostility to you? It did not. She knew I knew. The alert came at 4:47. All 47 vessels had crossed into Earth's outer system. Clean sensors, no resistance. At 5:03, the second alert arrived. All ships had returned to pre-launch coordinates. Engines cold, cruise nominal, transit time 0. But every vessel carried a new file, identical on all 47. No origin stamp. Admiral Lynch's complete operational plan, annotated. Every section reviewed. Quiet, precise corrections in the margins, not insults, corrections, pointing out logical errors, assumptions that did not hold. Places where the plan had misunderstood what it was planning against. The last line read, "We hope this is useful. Please feel free to send a representative." Below it, a smiley face. I watched Lynch's face at the emergency briefing. He read the annotations on his own plan, the careful dissection of every choice he had made, the gentle record of every place he had been wrong. He looked like a person who had just understood that the argument he was building toward was never going to work. After the briefing, I went to Sarah's quarters. She was sitting on the floor near the observation window. "The file," I said. "Yes." The smiley face. She smiled. "That was not our idea. That was entirely its own initiative. We were as surprised as you." I sat on the floor across from her. Outside, stars turned. What happens now? The Council decides. They can regard us as a threat, which changes nothing but makes everyone's life complicated, or they can treat this as what it is, an introduction. She looked at me. What do you think they will choose? I thought about Lynch's face, the 12 Council members reading the annotations, the smiley face on 47 command screens. They will be embarrassed for a while, then they will vote, closer than it should be. But in the end, they will do the right thing. Why? Because you brought biscuits, and because the thing near you did not have to annotate the plan. It could have sent the fleet back empty-handed. It chose to explain. That is not hostile. Even Lynch will see that. She looked at me with an expression I could finally name. Hope, watching it slowly begin to happen. When they chose who to send, there was a long discussion. Someone with authority, imposing, credentials and rank. And they chose you. They chose me. Because what we actually needed was someone very willing to talk. The formal vote was held 11 days after Sarah arrived. 11 days of closed sessions, raised voices in corridors. I was not present for most of it. I attended as an advisor 3 times. The rest of those days, I wrote the most thorough analysis of humanity the Council had ever commissioned. Sarah was detained on the 4th day, protective custody, house arrest in her quarters. I visited, brought food from the station kitchen. She ate it with polite tolerance. She asked about my work, listened with genuine interest. She had a habit of asking the one question that made everything reorganize itself. On the 9th day, I asked, "Does it know you are here?" "Yes." "Does it know what is happening with the vote?" "Yes." "Does it care?" A pause. "It cares. The way someone cares when they watch a person they are fond of make a difficult decision. It does not need the outcome one way or another, but it is paying attention." The vote was held on the 11th day. I presented my analysis. Then I waited in the outer office for 4 hours, drank 4 cups of terrible tea. Minister Valhat came out. He sat down across from me. "The Council has voted. Earth is designated a sovereign sanctuary, the first of its kind. No approach without formal invitation, full withdrawal of monitoring assets, diplomatic recognition of humanity as a protected civilization." I let out a breath. "Admiral Lynch voted in favor by a narrow margin. Your analysis was persuasive." "It was accurate. I only wrote what was true." "Yes, that is what was persuasive." He left. I walked to Sarah's quarters. She was standing by the observation window. She turned. Her face was quiet and settled. "The Council voted correctly," I said. "Yes, they did. You are free to go." She nodded, then she crossed the room and held out her hand. The human gesture, no performance, one person to another. I took her hand. Warm, firm, odd, and entirely comprehensible. "How will you go home?" "No ship." "The same way I arrived. I will be collected." "Does it know it is time?" "It knew before I did." We walked to the outer dock. The long corridor, observation panels, dock arm 7, empty. She stopped at the airlock, reached into her jacket pocket, produced a small card. Actual paper, cream-colored, slightly thick. She held it out. I took it. One side, handwritten coordinates, a location. The other side, "If you ever want to visit properly, knock first." "We mean it," she said. "You would be welcome, you specifically. You are the person who understood the warning. That is all we required." She went through the airlock, the door sealed. I stood at the observation panel. Stars, open space. 3 minutes passed, nothing. Then the space at arm 7 was empty. She was gone. I looked down at the card. The coordinates were not in any system I recognized. I put it in my pocket. I have carried it for 7 years. Left breast pocket of my working jacket. I can feel it when I press my hand against my chest. Slightly thick, cream-colored paper. Handwritten coordinates at the edge of the mapped universe. I have not used them, not yet. I slept for 14 hours that night, the first solid sleep in weeks. When I woke, the station looked the same. The stars looked the same. But I had rewritten the file on Earth. The Council's official assessment now reflected something closer to the truth. I added one line at the end, not standard practice. I added it anyway. The warning was not a threat. It was not leverage. It was one civilization reaching across a very large, dark space to tell another to please be careful, because they did not want anything bad to happen to us. The first thing they said was chosen out of concern for our safety. We should remember that. I think about that line late at night, when the station is quiet, when the stars turn past the corridor windows. I think about a small blue planet at the edge of the outer arm, ordinary from a distance, water and rock and cloud, the scatter of lights on the night side. And somewhere beneath those lights, something very old that has not finished thinking yet. Something that was ancient before the Council existed. Something that found its small, noisy neighbors worth staying near. I press my hand against my jacket. The card is there. "If you ever want to visit properly, knock first." I am going to go eventually. I have known it since the day Sarah left. I will go to those coordinates. I will stand at whatever represents a door. I will knock. I will see what is there. Not yet. There is more to understand first. But I will go. The universe is very old and very large and mostly very dark, and most of what lives in it is simply doing its best. And somewhere out at the edge, on a world that looks ordinary, something extraordinary happened. Not the ancient thing, though that was extraordinary enough. It was that the people who lived next to it stayed kind. That is what the warning was. Not fear, not power, not politics. Kindness, sent on every frequency, in every language, to every receiver in the known galaxy. From a building in London that had no visible antenna. "Do not approach Earth. This is a warning." We heard it, eventually we listened. I press my hand to my jacket. The card is there. Cream-colored, slightly thick, handwritten. Someday soon I am going to knock.